At Front, we have this really unique culture. We share every piece of information about our business with our employees. We get out of our board meetings. I send out our board deck unedited to every one of our employees. That's 300 people. Most businesses don't do that. If I talk to the businesses, ask any one of their employees, they don't understand the P&L. They don't understand how much the cash position of the business. They don't understand the investment. They don't understand the forecast, you name it. This allows us to have extreme transparency in terms of helping people understand how to manage a business and why, when we're talking about change, we might be making those decisions.
Please welcome Dan O'Connell, CEO at Front.
How's everybody doing? So my name's Dan. I'm the CEO of a business called Front. Front is a customer service platform. What's interesting about this story is this is not my first time taking over from a founder and being the new installed CEO. I did this previously at a business called TalkIQ when we were pre-revenue and had to figure out how to do product market fit. Front is a much larger business. We have almost 9,000 customers. We're near $100 million in revenue. And so there's many different things to think about in terms of change management, assimilating in. So as much as might be about how does a CEO come into a business, think about the foundations and the cultures that are there, I think it's actually practical for many of you that might be just leaders and even managers or just getting into leadership in your career and thinking about assimilating into a new role, into a new company, and thinking about how do you actually drive that leadership. So I really have kind of 4 practical tips that we'll talk about and get into. So the first one is really about assimilating and taking a step back and listening. And I think naturally as humans, when we get into a new business or a new job, the first thing we want to go and do is actually just immediately drive change. And I think what I would encourage everyone to do is really take a step back, think about building relationships, think about assimilation, and just listen and learn. And that can be really hard for us as humans. As I said, we naturally want to go and drive this change. One of the ways that I did that coming into the business, I think are practical tips, is finding the OGs within a culture and a business. Who are the people that have been here for 5 years? For us at Front, we've been around for 10 years. We have probably 60 employees out of the 300 that have been with us for more than 6 years. So there's a bunch of these OGs that I wanted to listen to and understand how do they feel about change? Because the worst thing I can do going into a business is actually say, this is the way that I want to go and do things, or this is the way forward. So one is taking a step back, listening and learning, making those connections, understanding what is the propensity and openness to drive change. Are there going to be these natural friction points that might exist? The second piece that I would talk about is thinking about operating cadence and speed. So once it's understanding and learning, hey, is there this propensity and openness to change? And if there's not going to be friction, like how can I actually drive that? To me, I think about operating cadences as probably one of the easiest things to go and do. When I joined Front, we would forecast our business on a bi-weekly basis. I've been a CRO in past lives. I care a lot about go-to-market. So even just little things like shifting our forecasting and our meetings from bi-weekly to every Monday and doing that on a weekly basis is a little thing that doesn't take a bunch of overhead. It's really easy to implement, but actually allows us to start communicating very differently within the business. And so again, a lot of these changes don't have to be big new things. They don't need to be restructuring teams. They don't need to be changing projects or instilling new projects. It can be simply changing the way the business shows up and thinks about actually managing themselves. Again, just changing operating cadences. I think one of the other things that comes up, and to no surprise, is like, how do you build momentum? Again, I view any leadership position for a venture-backed company as playing in the big leagues. So many of you are probably managers or want to get into leaders. Some of you are probably CEOs or founders. You're playing in the professional sports league is the analogy that I use. High pressure jobs, again, whether you are a first-time manager or you're an executive or a founder, there are high expectations, there are high rewards. But those expectations are from employees, they're from investors, and they're from your coworkers. And I think that the biggest thing that you have to do in those positions is find the small wins and constantly celebrate the small wins that appear. So for us, it is about, we have a new focus over the past year for customer service. every week when we do our all hands and I send out even a weekly email, it's all about celebrating the little wins that we have, whether that's a renewal, whether that's a rip and replace against one of our competitors. And again, I would encourage you don't have to think really big of how to celebrate this momentum and celebrate these wins. It can be these little things. And again, it's all about building this momentum. And I think momentum is one of those things that is incredibly hard to build, but once you have it, it's incredibly easy to continue to lean into and maintain. Again, something that I think can be overlooked. I think the fourth piece is actually taking a step back and thinking like a person and all about transparency. This is something I think gets overlooked all the time within the startup world, within businesses, is can I trust my employees and how comfortable am I to share information? At Front, we have this really unique culture. We share every piece of information about our business with our employees. We get out of our board meetings. I send out our board deck unedited to every one of our employees. That's 300 people. Most businesses don't do that. If I talk to the businesses, ask any one of their employees, they don't understand the P&L. They don't understand how much the cash position of the business. They don't understand the investment. They don't understand the forecast, you name it. This allows us to have extreme transparency in terms of helping people understand how to manage a business and why, when we're talking about change, we might be making those decisions. I think you can trust people much more than we naturally want to think about it. When I first showed up, I talked about like you have this natural reaction to want to change something. One of the things I did, which I would say was a critical mistake, was say, I'm used to not sharing that board deck with every employee. Like, how can we share that information? What happens if it leaks? What happens if it shows up on social media? And so I actually said, look, we'll continue to talk about our board metrics in an all hands meeting, but we're not going to continue to send out the email. And a friend came up to me because there was a lot of employees that were really frustrated by this change, rightfully. And the comment that really resonated with me was, if you make a change and there's more questions that come from it, it's probably not helpful for transparency. And that statement is really resonating with me. The immediate thing that I did was, look, go back and say, we're going to continue to send that email out. I'm going to continue to share the board deck. There's no value in me trying to control that or have this nervousness around whether that information is shared. So again, these are little things where I think transparency matters. But the purpose of that story that I tell is really about being humble and willing for leaders to actually admit that there's a mistake and to go and make a quick change in course of action. And I think those are other things that we naturally just get caught up on, which is it's okay to make mistakes, admit them. You actually gain a ton more transparency and respect by driving that, and you can trust people. And again, we've never had a leak of information. This has never been an issue with us. And again, allows us to have, I think, some much more practical and very real conversations for how we manage the business and the opportunities ahead for us. So I'll leave you with this of 3 main takeaways. The first one, to no surprise, like anytime you're, as I said, you're stepping into a new role or a company, don't assume anything. I have done this so many times, this mistake of going in and naturally assuming, oh, this is the way we've done something, or this information should be there. You got to get into the details. You got to take that step back, listen, learn, don't assume, ask questions, help people understand why you're asking the questions, which is to learn so you can hopefully make better decisions and smarter decisions and avoid some of the mistakes that I have made. I think 2 is trust your gut. I live in this world now where if I think something, I have to say it out loud. And I just encourage people. I think it brings much more transparent, open conversations. It allows you to have challenging conversations in a way. If you're thoughtful of the context and tone, that's all that matters. But trust your gut. As I've gotten older, and I think as you just mature, again, as a person, I think you start to hear that intuition a little bit more, that voice in your head or that feeling. You start to realize whether something is right or wrong. Listen to it, act on it. And I think the last piece of advice I would give you, especially for founders, CEOs, I always tell people, I hope many of you aspire to run businesses or be founders. It's the most fun job of the world. I actually feel less stressed in this role than I do in other roles, like CRO roles that I've had in the past. And that comes down to the belief that I can do things my way. Sounds a little bit controlling, but what it means is I have the empowerment to go and act on the things that I want to act on. And there's this incredible surface area to do that. Somebody also told me this really nice statement, which was, you should make your job the job that you want it to be. And that really stuck with me because it demonstrated that every one of us is in roles. Some of you might have a number of reporting layers, but that doesn't stop you from doing this, which is you have your responsibilities. You should view those responsibilities as a blank check in a field to go and operate and execute on them. And if you have ideas, you should share them. But again, do things the way that you want to do them. And again, if you're a founder or a CEO, ultimately, you're going to be the one accountable for it. I never want to look back and say, oh, I wish I had acted on that. So my passing words were that. You've got some practical tips, and I look forward to meeting you if you're around the rest of the day today or tomorrow. Thank you.